The next theory we're going to look at is aggression cue hypothesis by Berkowitz. And this theory is based on stimuli or signals from the environment which triggers an aggressive response. So an example of this could be you're playing hockey and a defender pushes you in the back when you're about to receive the ball, and this could cause a retaliation. You turn around and push the player back. So the stimuli is associated with a learnt response from a previous situation. So maybe a few games before, someone's pushed you in the back and you've reacted that way. So it's a learnt response. You've probably done this before. It's also a conditioned response. And when you think about conditioning, you can think about back to AS level PE, where we talked about operant conditioning and about how we have these stimulus response bonds, and that we learn through conditioning that if there's a certain stimulus, there's a certain response that goes with it. And this could be positively reinforced by a coach or a parent. So I'll just go through a practical example for that. So someone has pushed you in the back when you're playing hockey, and a coach has shouted from the sideline, next time that person pushes you in the back, turn round and give them something back, push them back. Okay, and that has been positively reinforced by the coach. So they're telling you to do it. And maybe when you do it next time, when you do push them back, the coach might say, well done for sticking your ground, well done for pushing them back. So you've learned through the positive reinforcement from the coach that that's okay to do, and that stimulus of a push, the response to that is to turn around and push them back. So these are the negative points. The same stimuli can elicit different responses at different times from the same person. So this is quite complicated, but when I explain it should make sense. So that person that's got pushed in the back, sometimes they will turn around and push them back. Other times they may ignore the player completely. Other times they may go and speak to the referee about that player that's pushed them. Other times they may turn around and speak to them and ask them not to do it again. So there's lots of different responses that can happen from the same person. We don't always give that response. It's not set in stone that every time we get pushed, we're going to push someone back. The next thing is that same stimuli can elicit different responses from different people. So you could have Sally that gets pushed in the back. She turns around and pushes them back. You can get Gemma that gets pushed in the back. She doesn't say anything at all. You can get someone else who tells the referee. So everybody can have a different response, basically. The next thing is that we have the control to be able to recognise inappropriate aggression and avoid it. So if we know that that person's being inappropriately aggressive to us, that if we turn around and push them, or if we get aggressive and shout at them and swear at them, that actually it's going to lead us to getting into more trouble. So we have the control to say, hang on a minute, someone's pushed me in the back, I'm not going to do anything about it, I'm just going to play the best I can, and hopefully they won't do it again. So we have that control within us, not to think, is this right for me to be acting aggressively, or should I just calm down and act sensibly? The next theory we're going to look at is social learning theory by Bandura. And all of social learning theories, they have the same kind of keywords that you need to remember. So the first thing is that we're learning this aggression from observing others. It is likely to be copied. If we're watching someone that's aggressive, we're likely to copy that. And if you have a look at the Bobo doll experiment, which you'll be able to research, the adults were given a blow-up doll where they punched it and they kicked it, and it was filmed. This film was then shown to young children, and the children were then given this blow-up doll, and the children acted very aggressively, were punching and kicking the Bobo dolls just like the adults were. So this experiment was done by Bandura, and it proved that by watching others that are aggressive, we're likely to copy that. Key words that you can add here is vicarious processes, which means learning through others, and that's just a technical word that you could use to try and impress the examiner. The next point is that it's likely to be copied if the model is a significant other. So a significant other really means a role model, but the key keywords is significant other, and that could be a coach that you look up to. It could be a parent. It could be a friend. Okay, it could be an athlete that you look up to. The next thing is to say that reinforcement of aggressive behaviour can increase the chances of copying. So we've just talked about reinforcement, about positive reinforcement. You could also talk about negative reinforcement and about punishment. All of those three things, if the significant other does give you some positive reinforcement, it's likely that the increase, that the chances of copying the aggression is going to happen. The next thing to say is that the same sex model is likely to be copied. So males normally copy males, and it's more likely for them to copy if it is a male, and the same with females. Males are more likely to be physically aggressive than females. Obviously, this is a controversial point, and this is somewhere where you might add your own opinion. So you might say, I agree with this statement. You might say, I don't agree. And obviously, you need to explain why you agree or disagree. So a practical example of social learning theory is if a coach is shouting and being aggressive to a rugby official, it is likely the players will copy and do the same. But, so these are the things that go against the theory. At times, we do not always copy model behaviour. So, as the saying goes, if someone jumps off a cliff, are you going to follow? Sometimes we will watch someone do something silly, like being aggressive in a sport, but we don't always copy that. We have our own kind of mind, and we don't always copy that. The next thing to say is that counter-cultural behaviour. That's a key term, and that basically means that people sometimes want to be different and they don't want to copy the norms of society. So if we're in a hockey match and 9 of the players are very aggressive because they think the official is being unfair, there may be 1 or 2 players that don't act in this way, and they're not copying what everyone else is doing, and they want to be individual. The next thing you can talk about is that sometimes we cannot help ourselves being aggressive. We have these innate feelings which counteract what we ought to be doing. So sometimes this anger and this frustration builds up in us, and it's not because we're copying anyone, it's actually within us that we start being aggressive. It could be lots of different factors which add to it, but it's not actually watching someone that's made us aggressive. It's something that was within us and it's built up over time. There's some other factors you could mention which could get you some extra marks, and this is only if you've obviously got some time to put these in. The first thing you can mention is that it could be external factors outside sport that cause the aggression. So it could be that person is having problems at home, in relationships, or they could be in different personal circumstances. They could have just been having a bad day. And these external factors actually can help, can add to the aggression in the sport. The next thing is that socialization, and that the cultural norms determine your behaviour and what is expected. So it is thought that some cultures and the way they've been brought up and the way they've been socialised with others, they are naturally calm and placid, whereas other cultures are sometimes labelled as fiery and aggressive. Some sports are naturally aggressive. This is a really, really good point to add, that some sports in particular, like ice hockey, like rugby, like boxing, in all these sports there is an intent to hurt or injure others, and those sports naturally increase the aggression in the game. So to sum up, when you are doing a 20 marker, you need to do these things in order to get the top grades. So the first thing you need to do is say your point. Say your point nice and clearly and use the technical language. Use things like significant other, like catharsis. Okay, all of these words show that you're very, very knowledgeable. And if you just say the basic words, you're not going to get as high a grade. Try and develop your point and give an explanation. So if I'm talking about the protection and the need to survive and how that's a trait that lies within us, I then develop that by talking about prehistoric times and about cavemen and how they have to protect what they had, and how that helped with the trait theory. So I've developed that. Make sure you give practical examples throughout. This is something that people forget to do. You need to give practical examples for each theory. And if you're explaining something but you think you're not maybe explaining it the best you can, always give a practical example. Make sure you give a named sport. Don't just say in a game, the official. Okay, be very, very clear. In a game of football, the referee, or in a game of basketball, the umpire. Don't just say match. Okay, be very specific with what you're saying. The next thing is to give critical points. We've just gone through all the buts, but make sure you use other connectives. So you could say, on the other hand, this point does not back up the theory, or alternatively, other people believe this. So make sure you give those critical points. You cannot get anywhere near the top grades without any critical points. Lastly, give your opinion where you can and be obvious about it. To get that top bracket of grade, so like up from 16 to 20 I think it is, to get into that bracket you need to give your opinion. If you don't, you cannot actually get into that bracket at all. So make sure it's really obvious by saying, in my opinion, I believe this theory is not very valid, or other things like that. You can put your opinion wherever you like. You can put it at the start, you can put it in between what you're saying, or you could put it at the end when you're making a conclusion by saying, out of all these theories I've had a look at, I believe in my own opinion. So being really, really clear about it. Hopefully that's given you a bit of knowledge about aggression and the theories. I hope it helps towards your exams.